In the mid to late 60s, anime was beginning to shape up into what it was going to end up looking like. For example, Osamu Tezuka's Astro Boy really helped popularize the style and look of anime, particularly shonen, which of course was built off of the feature and short-length films which came before. Also, the first magical girl show was created with the show Mahoutsukai Sally, and then of course with Tobar the Eighth Man, you have numerous amounts of characteristics and stylistic choices that you can still see in anime today. Another one is Tetsujin 28 Go, which, from my understanding, kind of introduced the super robot genre, which I think you might be able to say is a precursor to the mecha genre. Maybe, I don't know, definitely different though. Although anime started to look and feel like anime, for me it was missing something. Teenage angst. Yeah, these shows were dark and had death and were dark as hell. These shows are primarily geared towards kids, but there just isn't a ton of melodrama or material that teenagers are specifically meant to relate with. Don't get me wrong, these old kid shows, like I say again, these old kid shows are dark, but right off the top of my head, there are only 3 shows that I would describe as edgy/angsty teenager shows: Sabuto Ichi, Dororo, and Cyborg 009. A lot of the character designs in Cyborg 009 don't even look that much different from today's anime. I remember fondly on one of my Spider-Man VHS tapes, seeing a commercial about a show called Cyborg 009. I think it was the 90s version or whatever. It was one of my first exposures to anime. It seemed dark, but yet intriguing at the same time, mainly because of the subject matter, which contained, cyborgs on a mission to stop world-tearing problems. So naturally, when I saw that the original version of the show came out in the 60s, I, got a little excited. I became a little curious. So far as I've climbed my way through the 1960s, there hasn't really been a whole lot of shows, like I mentioned, that resemble the current state of anime or current looks. Like I say again, as soon as I watched the first episode, I very quickly started running comparisons between many different things. All the way down to the hairstyles, the kind of uniforms they wore, and again, the character designs were all a precursor of things to come. Anime characters, especially ones in the shonen demographic, always have some kind of angsty, teenage emotional charm to them, usually. Well, of course, not usually, all the time they all do. The relationships and their dynamics are always in the forefront, pretty much, of most shonens that I've seen. And I noticed in a lot of shows, especially ones from 1960 to 1966, a lot of the times the characters, or the relationships between the characters were in the background, where the plot was fully in control of everything. It didn't feel like the characters necessarily were. There was one scene in the show where you see 2 characters talking on a swing set. The conversation essentially dealt with the way one of them was feeling, while also making subtle hints at their relationship. Overall, I thought the scene was incredibly corny, but I guess you could say the shy, emo-ish mannerisms of the characters, and just the whole nature of the scene, was really something that I could see in any recent show. There's also many other characters in the 10 episodes that I watched that explore the inner emotions of the characters, like the bird character who can fly. His episode dealt with saving a girl from a bunch of gunmen in another country. The guy gets shot up and overall has a tough time with saving the day, until he was forced to call for backup. The characterization, although simple, is really good at making this guy seem like a stoic hero who is unable to do his job. Of course, you could still say that there are things about the art style that are really silly, and the animation is really dated, but at the time, there definitely was nothing like this. And if you look at the animation limitations from TV cartoons at the time, anime or not, then you definitely can gather that this show does a pretty excellent job with what it's given. You may think that the animation isn't very good, and is pretty stilted, and I would say that you are correct. However, for its time, it's as good as it ever could have been. And I have to preface this, don't in any way take this review as me saying that the show is perfect or anything. I just thought there were many episodes that were entertaining, and I think that accomplished what it wanted to do. I usually find that with older shows, there's a lot of miscellaneous humor that constantly drowns out the experience, and I think that because old cartoons and anime were the first to experiment with a new idea, there was not that much depth within the final product. I mean, imagine the first car. Was it anything like today's cars? No. So what I'm getting at is, because a lot of these shows are the first of their kind, they come off as really stripped down, bare bones representations of what they're trying to do. Most of the 60s anime that I've watched are pretty episodic with loose continuity. And to be quite honest, some of these shows I just hated watching because of how stilted and bogged down the pacing was throughout all of them. For example, there's this one show called Yusei Kamen, or at least I think that's what it's called, or how it's pronounced, which came out in 1966. It is about a superhero-like figure who fights an evil organization that exists on the moon. Ningen. Now, I was only able to find 3 episodes, and to put it bluntly, the show is a gigantic bore. It's like the show had a list of objectives for each episode and decided to stretch those things out for as long as possible. The first episode was just the villains being evil and the Yusei Kamen superhero characters showing up at the end to ruin their day. The second pretty much had more of the same, and then I think it was the third episode when they decided to explore the deep and masterful backstory of this wonderful character. It was revealed that the origin of this character is that his dad worked for this space thing and he died. His android assistant then immediately went back to Earth and told the boy about his father, and then the boy decided to train and become the Yusei Kamen guy or something. I mean, of course, there's some other stuff involved, but none of it really matters. It was just a whole lot of stupid exposition just to set up a very anticlimactic ending. Wouldn't really recommend at all. Well, I don't know, maybe I would recommend watching, like, I don't know, a piece of it. You know, it's kind of interesting, but it's boring. I wouldn't want to watch any more of it. Youkai Ningen Bim, I think that's how it's pronounced. Probably not. I probably fucked that one up horribly. Is another show that came out around the same time and also has this exact issue. It's a show about a monster squad that goes around saving humans from evil. And there's also something about them maybe one day becoming human. I was only able to find the first episode, and frankly, I don't think I need to see much more to know what I'm looking at. I've seen many other wacky kid shows that have interesting ways to get from point A to point B, and frankly, this is not one of them. In the first episode, we see a young boy get pulled over by these goons, and it turns out that it was an evil mom and her son that pulled him over, wants to take over the boy's inheritance or something. After the boy and his caretaker get thrown into the water, one of the main characters of the show goes to save them. And besides that, not a whole lot else really happened. The bad guys get caught, and that was the end of it. I'm sure that for the time the show was pretty exceptional, but if you're talking about today's standards, I think Real Monsters by Nickelodeon is a pretty good comparison and takes a concept like this and makes it more fun. Now, of course, I'm not saying these shows have a ton of similarities, but for what it is, if you're looking for a wacky monster show, there's tons of other cartoons that are more interesting. Although I will say this, from what I ended up learning about the show is that, I mean, it's connected to the production team of Golden Bat, you know, that's worth mentioning, but also in the 70's and 80's, and I think even the 90's, I'm sure even till today, they kept making more sequels. It was a very influential, I don't know if you could say influential, but it was a very popular show for its time. Yeah, but I wasn't too interested in the first show that came out in the 60's. I mean, there are aspects of it that look kind of cool and interesting, but that's about it. Anyways, the next show I want to talk about is called Wonder 3. Now, besides old shows that feel empty, there's also old shows that feel empty and have ridiculously so bad that it's good styled humor. Almost kind of like The Room, if you compare it to that, or some of those other so bad it's good directors where you just can't help but laugh at how bad it is. Anyways, Wonder 3 is one of these shows. The story is about an alien race that is examining the human species and has concluded that humans are defective and their planet should be destroyed. They sent out 3 of their men to go to Earth and see whether or not the human race is of any worth. On Earth, they turn into animals to conceal their identity. I know, this is pretty stupid. And they eventually meet up with some kid, and they go around helping the kid and his older brother go on wacky adventures. Like I said with the other 2 shows, there's not much to appreciate besides the characterization of the animal characters. However, by far the best thing about the show is the main character's older brother, who is a secret agent. This guy is absolutely ridiculous. The show is so dated that whenever it tries to do some kind of cool action scene, it just comes off as very awkward and rubbery. Whenever the fight scenes are going on, the brother's legs are drawn in a way that doesn't even look like it's properly connected to his body. I mean, this guy has some serious ragdoll aesthetic to him, and the way this poorly drawn doofus quickly beats the heck out of his enemies is just hilariously awesome and funny. I only watched 1 episode, and I hear that the show does try to develop some kind of romance between the female alien and the boy or something. And I did take a peek at the last episode, and it seems like it's dealing with the alien race trying to destroy the world and stuff. But from what I have seen from the animation and its type of humor, I'm kind of discouraged from watching the rest of the show, even if I could find the rest. Besides the lovable characterization for the animals and some of the characters, which is well pointed out, it's a mediocre pile of doo-doo. There were some other shows like Osu Matsukun and Golden Bat that I wanted to talk about. However, I think I made my point very clear with what I said about these shows here. All in all, there is good content from this era, but to get through it, you have to get through a lot of boringness. Okay, it's time to admit I'm not the biggest fan of old media, like in general, whether it be like TV shows, cartoons, or movies. As I've explained in my previous statements on 60s TV anime, at least. A lot of these shows are kind of a chore to watch. They just spend their entire runtime running across the screen aimlessly until some silly, non-entertaining final climax hits you over the head. Whether it's Golden Bat or Youkai Ningen Bim or whatever the heck it's called, I can never really fully stay engaged. Same goes with 8-Man, despite me liking it to a certain extent. Before I got into the 70s, and even well after I started digging into that decade, I have noticed that the quality has gone up, but my engagement for the shows still varies. Shows like Mahoutsukai Sally, or don't quite know how to pronounce this name, are somewhat similar to me in the sense that they both have varying levels of engagement. So the Mahoutsukai Sally, or whatever, is about a magical girl who doesn't want to listen to her parents and study magic, so she escapes into the human world in order to have more fun. The whole appeal of the show, for me, is the character interactions. You could definitely say that there are a ton of modern anime that are way more engaging with its character interaction, but despite being a bit rambling in execution, I would still say that it provides an interesting viewing experience, considering the fact that this is actually the very first magical girl show. So Sally and her human friend both have little brothers, and as they play pranks on each other and go on little misadventures, you really get the sense of movement with the order of events that take place. I've mocked some of the 60s shows in the past for just running aimlessly across the screen, but this show actually uses its wacky, old-fashioned slapstick humor in a progressive way that moves the pacing along quite nicely. It may not have kept me engaged the entire time because I didn't always find everything it did to be interesting, but since it's the first of its kind, I would say that does a good job for what it is. So this show, which I still have a really hard time pronouncing its name, which I believe actually came out a little later than Sally, is a show which is essentially about a kid who lives with his dad, who for some reason is in the form of an eyeball. It's kind of like a Halloween-y type show. I guess you could say it's kind of like a monster show, kind of like a Youkai Ninja Bim. It's kind of like a monster show similar to that. Anyways, him and his eyeball dad go around and protect citizens from evil spirits, kind of. I at times did get a little bored with the show, but as it has all of the same qualities of Sally, I could very easily justify watching something like this despite me not having a whole lot to say about it. I just want to mention the show because I think it's very entertaining on a surface level, because characters like Kitaru or the eyeball dad and all the side characters that come with the episodic plotline are interesting enough that warrants you watching the show. It can get a little dull, but it's still worthwhile for its creativity. I would say that both of these shows aren't something you should rush out to see, but they are definitely interesting pieces of this decade.